Trump's DOJ did an unusual interview with Maxwell and didn't ask obvious questions or, and this is new today, use basic corroboration of exactly this evidence. These revelations show how former Trump criminal defense attorney and now number 2 at DOJ, Mr. Blanche, how they operated. You have this 2011 email. Epstein writes that this redacted victim spent hours at Epstein's house with Trump. Maxwell says, I've been thinking about that. And yet Blanche failed to use or reference basic evidence. Prosecutors pull emails, texts, and a heck of a lot more. So while I can't tell you what's in the DOJ's evidence room because they haven't released it, I can tell you this is exactly the kind of thing they would have and they failed to use. Take a listen.
Did you ever hear Mr. Epstein or anybody say that President Trump had done anything inappropriate with masseuses or with anybody in your world?
Absolutely never, in any context.
Okay, so Trump's former lawyer, this is where all norms have been breached. All norms. We don't have a Justice Department anymore. We have a Trump Department of let's protect Trump. We have inexperienced and unqualified people as U.S. attorneys. The second in command at the DOJ, as well as the first, are just completely Trump lawyers. They are not our lawyers anymore. So that is how I would take the deposition of a friendly witness who I knew was going to help my case. That is not seeking evidence. That is not seeking truth. And why would he? He's Trump's lawyers. He's not our lawyers. None of them are. Habaz's not our lawyer.
Is that a misuse of the Justice Department?
Yes, it's definitely a misuse. And our taxpayer dollars are paying for it. I mean, we need like a blue state tax strike or something to take back our government. It's going to take something big to stop this train because the people he's put in power. How did Acosta become labor secretary?
Who cut the first sweetheart deal? Yeah.
Yes, and Trump made him labor secretary. So now that certainly raises some questions right now. I mean, it has before too, and he had to. After New York finally indicted Epstein, Acosta had to resign because it was so clear that he violated the law in a secret agreement that violated the Crime Victims Protection Act. Mm-hmm. Why? Why did he do that and then become labor secretary to Trump? It's all related. And I sound like the Pizzagate conspiracy people for the Republicans?
Well, they don't cite as many statutes as you do, right, or how victims are supposed to be treated in our federal system, or know the names of all of these individuals who colluded together to help the trafficker.
Yep.
And now the convicted co-conspirator of the trafficker.
Right.
So thank you. That's a good legal fact check that we'd set up because that alone is a lot. Michelle, broadening out, what else is important today?
Well, look, I just think this story is so insane that it's hard not to sound a little bit insane talking about it. Right. But yes, I think that, we don't know what else is out there. What we do know is that the government is providing special favors to a convicted sex trafficker at the same time as we now know that she knows at least the answer to at least, I think, one crucial question. When Epstein said Donald Trump is the dog that didn't bark, what did he mean? And we have basically the whole of government working to make sure that we don't get the answer to that question.
Exactly. It's very scary. And it really draws attention to the fact that we don't have a Justice Department anymore. And that's scary. People are being pardoned left and right, insurrectionists and other people. Important cases are not being attended to. The FBI has been taken off terrorism. I mean, this is a scary time for us as anybody who cares about the law. Not having a Justice Department is a very scary thing when you have an out-of-control president, a Republican Party controlling Congress that won't stand up to him, won't, as the new Congresswoman said today, they've abandoned their role as a part of our government.
Well, and so is there a question here, and it's the closest echo is of the Watergate era, where you did have an attorney general who thought they were invincible. People say, oh, nothing matters. Michelle, nobody's ever going to get in trouble. That's how they felt. That's how they acted. You had an attorney general who was convicted and went to prison, which is quite a mark. Right. Some of these reforms we've seen tried to rebuild DOJ after that. Do you think, and I don't want to get ahead of the facts, a Congress that had subpoena power could investigate this. We need to know more. But do you think there are questions of misconduct here, both for number one and number two at this DOJ.
Absolutely, there's questions of misconduct. They are our lawyers. This is a government agency, the highest level law enforcement agency in our country, and they are operating against our interests in favor of a sex trafficker and co-conspirator of a sex trafficker, and those who enabled it, knew about it, or participated. That's gross illegally. It's unethical. They should be disbarred, and it's very scary because that's all that stands between us and a dictator. That Department of Justice and our Supreme Court, which also I have absolutely no confidence in.
Michelle?
I just think, I understand why people think, nothing matters because, Donald Trump has already been found liable for sexual assault. There's, a million reasons why none of this comes as a surprise. At the same time, you look at his polling numbers, they're in many ways worse than they were at this time in his first term when he was historically unpopular. And at some point, that gravity, if nothing else, just that political gravity starts to affect Republicans. You're already seeing a lot of criticism of him from the right, I think because they view him correctly as a lame duck. And a lot of that criticism is because he's not radical and nativist enough. Nevertheless, the idea that he can that he can get away with anything and they're not and without political.
The judges. It was almost poetic in a cruel way. After years of chaos, it wasn't a revolution, an election, or a protest that finally cornered Trump. It was the one thing he'd always treated as irrelevant, the law. For a man who lived his entire life bending rules, buying silence, and suing his way out of trouble, being told no was more than defeat. It was exposure. He thought the courts would protect him. After all, he'd stacked them himself. But the thing about power is that it believes its own myth until reality breaks through. One by one, judges, even the ones he'd handpicked, started ruling against him. They quoted the Constitution instead of cable news. They treated him not like a king, but like a defendant. And suddenly, the showman ran out of stage. That's when the rage began. He attacked them all, called them corrupt, biased, enemies of the people. But the truth is, he wasn't afraid of injustice. He was afraid of accountability. Because accountability doesn't bend to charm or threat. It's cold, procedural, boring, and unstoppable. It's the one thing that can't be bullied. Every courtroom became a mirror he couldn't break. Every ruling stripped away the myth he'd sold, that power makes you untouchable. And as the verdicts rolled in, civil, criminal, financial, America got to see something it hadn't seen in years. A system remembering what it was built for. Maybe that's why it mattered. Not because the judges were heroes. They weren't. They were just doing their jobs. But that's exactly what made it powerful. In an age of noise and spectacle, professionalism became rebellion. Integrity became resistance. And in those quiet moments, as gavels fell and lawyers argued, democracy found its pulse again. Trump always believed he could rewrite reality if he shouted loud enough. But law doesn't listen to volume. It listens to evidence. And when the shouting stopped, what was left were documents, signatures, and truths that didn't care about politics. That's how power ends, not in flames, but in paperwork. And maybe that's the final irony. The man who built his empire on television was finally undone by transcripts.